Gestures play an important role when it comes to presentation delivery. When used correctly, they have the power to make you look powerful and confident. Use them incorrectly and they can make you look nervous and uncomfortable, or worse, they can confuse or distract your audience and cause them to tune out. To avoid that, here are 5 general tips to help you get those gestures right for your next talk. Tip number 1, use them. That might seem like an obvious tip, but I've seen lots of speakers forget or neglect to use gestures, and that can cause you to look stiff and awkward. When you use gestures, you not only look more confident and energetic while presenting, you look warm and inviting to your audience. Using gestures is a way to pull your audience in and engage them. Imagine if I shared these tips with my arms at my side as rigid as a rock. That's pretty boring, right? So make sure whether you're sitting or standing, whether you're speaking virtually or in person, you make an effort to move your upper body. Tip number 2, use a variety of gestures. Too much of any one gesture and your audience will become distracted. Our brains are trained to pick up patterns. So if you use the same hand movement over and over, that's all your audience will focus on. But if you use one hand, and then the other hand, and then both hands, and you switch up the movement, your audience won't get bored and you'll look more natural as a speaker. Tip number 3, take up the space you have. If you're delivering virtually, you have a small window to show your gestures to your audience. You need to make sure that you stay within the frame. Big gestures are great if you're delivering in person, but virtually, your audience needs to see whatever you're showing them. That means you have to bring your gestures up toward your face a little bit more. Now, this feels awkward at first. When we speak naturally in conversation, our gestures tend to stay down here about waist high. But if you place your gestures at that level while speaking virtually, like I'm doing right now, your audience might not see them. And they need to if you want to create energy in your presentation. If you're presenting in person, take up all the space you want. Avoid gluing your elbows to your torso and branch out with your movements. When you take up whatever space is available to you, you'll look like a much more powerful presenter. Tip number 4, match your gestures to your content. Descriptive gestures are great. Those are the ones that paint a picture and highlight your content. But if those gestures aren't congruent with your message, your audience will get confused. If I say, we have a really small window to close this deal, but my arms are stretched out wide like this, that doesn't match at all. But if I say, we have a really small window to close this deal, and I make my hands look like a small window, that makes a lot more sense to my audience. Those gestures reinforce my message rather than contradict it. So make sure your gestures match your content. Tip number 5, give those gestures a break. As important as gestures are, if you use them too much, not only will you distract your audience, you might even get winded, breathy, or nervous. Your brain, your lungs, and your body too need a break, and so does your audience. So in between sentences, when you pause to let a point land, consider dropping your arms to your side. Or if you're seated like I am now, drop them in your lap. If you're seated at a desk or a table, you can place them gently on that surface in front of you. Some people even choose to place their hands in front of them in a neutral resting position. That's fine too. Just make sure you stop using them once in a while. Think, use them, and then lose them. That way, when you do use them, they're more impactful and less distracting. When it comes to gestures, remember these 5 tips. Use them, use a variety, take up the space you have, match your gestures to your content, and give those gestures a break. If you use gestures strategically, you'll be well on your way to looking like a confident and energetic presenter.